The Consulting Success podcast is powered by the Clarity Coaching Program. If you'd like to work directly with the Consulting Success team and receive personal coaching and support to optimize and grow your consulting business, marketing, and revenue, visit consultingsuccess.com to find out more and apply.
Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business.
Hey everyone, it's Michael Zapersky and welcome back to another episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. Today I'm joined by Danielle Hayden. Danielle, welcome.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So you are a CPA. You've also written a book. You're a former CFO, which we'll talk about. And today you are the CEO and co-founder of Kickstart Accounting. You guys are a virtual accounting firm that provides accounting, bookkeeping, other CFO types of services for entrepreneurs and businesses. And I really want to get into how you got to where you are and how you built up your business, because today you have about 23 or so people in the company. And I'm sure it didn't start like that. So let's kind of pull the curtain back and figure out the steps you took and the lessons that you learned so that others can benefit from your journey. So I saw you spend about over a decade in consulting, right? Before you actually started your own business. And then most recently, before starting your company, you were a CFO at a firm. And I'm wondering if you can take us back, kind of guess maybe a decade, or how, 2014 you started your business?
Yeah, 2014.
So several years back, what was going on like in your life, the decision to leave corporate, to leave a career as a CFO, to start your own business? Why do that? Why not kind of just keep climbing the corporate ladder?
Yeah. So my story is very different. Corporate kind of gets a bad rep these days. Like, quit your corporate job. Corporate's miserable. I actually learned a lot. I learned a lot from working in the corporate world. And I loved the management team that I was working with. We were owned by a private equity firm. I loved the private equity firm that we were working with. So it really had nothing to do with the internal turmoil of not enjoying the space that I was at. And I actually had a ton of work-life balance too. My CEO at the time, I've learned a lot from him, and we have a lot of his values in the values of my company now, where he wanted us to be able to get home for dinner or if there was a recital. So there was none of those driving factors, which I like to remember because it was a good time. Really, for me, it was being able to serve a bigger purpose. So what I had realized, I was doing some volunteer work for I call it like an entrepreneurship hub here in Cleveland, Ohio, and helping business owners put together a budget as part of their business plan. And it was usually for a business owner who was going for a second round of capital. So they had an existing business, but they needed additional funding to continue to grow. What I found was that these business owners couldn't create a budget because they didn't have bookkeeping. They didn't have any of that in place. So we were beating our heads against a wall, and I'm asking them questions, and they just over and over again. Now, what do they not only were they not sure, right? So they weren't approaching their business with confidence, but they were mad and they were angry and they were frustrated and they felt less than. And then they got to a point where they're like, I don't even know that I deserve this money. I can't even answer your questions to build this budget. And so this became this much bigger mission, right? On how can I take everything that I learned from the corporate world? How could I take everything that I learned from being an accountant and my love of numbers to be able to help as many business owners as possible? Because what I was doing, I was really helping the rich get rich, right? And serving our board of directors and our investors. I was helping them continuing to grow rather than helping entrepreneurship as a whole continue to grow.
Got it. So you felt the calling towards supporting more entrepreneurs in an area where many just don't have experience or aren't even sure how to go about things. We'll get more into the business itself, and I definitely want to break it down so that we can better understand how you've structured it and why you've done so. But when I look at your title, so you are the CEO of the company. You're also a co-founder. So talk to me a little bit about the partnership. What does that look like in terms of your other co-founder, in terms of roles? Just wondering, what does that all look for others that might be getting into partnerships?
Yeah. So we are actually no longer co-founders and partners. As of about a year ago, as of the time of this recording, about a year ago, my business partner actually stepped away from the firm and pursued other opportunities. And I'm now the sole owner of the business. I think that decision was made from a both mental, emotional, personal side, as well as how we grew in the business. From my experience, and I've worked with a lot of our clients throughout the years who have had partnerships. We grew in ways together, but in most ways, we really grew and found out who we were as owning a company. So my business partner came into the business with an audit background. So she was an auditor and then had a little bit of experience in a corporate background, where most of my experience was in a corporate setting. But neither one of us had ever been the CEO of a business.
Yeah.
We were both primarily accountants, right? That's what we did. And so we went into this business really not sure. We didn't do a personality test or decide who was going to do what role. We really just threw ourselves in the business. We got immersed into every single thing. And then it was as one person had a liking for one task more than the other, or we just understood that it was a stronger skill set versus one of us versus the other. And then we left it up to the guys, right? Left it up to see who was going to flourish and what. And fortunately, right, our paths led us to where we are today.
And did you have a formal partnership agreement
Absolutely.
in place? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So even from day one or early on, you had all those kind of legal and structural stuff in place to protect both of you. And did it go as deep as, because you said that some of your roles you weren't really clear on, like you figured them out as you went along. How much detail did you get, and share whatever you're comfortable sharing? Oftentimes in partnerships, people don't necessarily think about what might go wrong. They're just thinking, no, we're good. We're going to grow. Everything's going to work out, until you start realizing that maybe you're spending a lot more time in the business than the other person, or you're just producing a lot more value, or whatever it might be. Did you guys spend time on that stuff early on, or not so much?
We did. Yeah, we did. We spent a lot of time on that early on. And luckily, we were both accountants in the business world, so we understood that piece. And then again, as accountants, so I am a CPA and my business partner was not a CPA. And the board of accountancy here in Ohio requires that one person, whoever is the CPA, holds 51% and the other holds 49%. So we had a few things on our side that actually required us to think a little bit further. And we understood from a fundamental standpoint, legal contracts and its impact on we had spent a good amount of time at the beginning understanding what was our company worth. We actually had shares of stock in our business. So when I bought my partner out, I bought her shares of stock in the business when we restructured. But we really thought through that. Like, if there was a dispute, how do we solve this dispute? Who is going to be the last person to solve that? How much money are you allowed to spend in the business without getting approval? We actually had a board of directors from day one. And so we had a group of people who we were reporting to and talking to.
Yes. Sounds like you're very thoughtful in this process. And I'd say probably more thoughtful, it sounds like, or more detailed than a lot of people would be. But maybe that's just your numbers and background, the way that you apply and follow things. The more, I would say, typical or average entrepreneurs dives in, takes action, and kind of figures things out along the way. So I'm wondering though, is there, looking back, any lessons learned or anything that maybe you would have done differently in terms of the partnership now that you are where you are a year after making that transition?
Yeah, communication. And I don't mean that as like communication in the way you communicate with your spouse or you communicate with your kids or your employees. I mean, deeply communicate. We joked. So I got married about a year ago, and we joked that she was my first marriage. She was my first marriage, and we got divorced. And it was important for us to communicate, and we didn't hold those boundaries. We thought a conversation at the end of the day via cell phone while I'm dropping my kids off at basketball and she was taking some classes after school, getting her MBA. So while we were commuting to those things, that was enough communication to withstand this partnership. And it was not. And so if there was something that I could do differently, it would be weekly. So we run Kickstart Accounting Inc. now runs on EOS. So we have, with my leadership team today, we have a weekly L10 meeting, which is a 90-minute meeting where we have a set agenda. We have clear rocks. We know who sits in what seats. We have an accountability chart. We know exactly where we're going for the year, who's doing what to get us there. And then we have an opportunity to IDS, so issue decisions, anything that needs to be solved. So I know when I talk about EOS to other people, they're like, we're not big enough for that. And people blow me off. But if there was one thing I could do differently, it would be implement EOS from day one, even though neither one of us felt like we had the time or the energy or the focus. I would have had that accountability chart, right? Even though her and I were sitting in almost every seat, we would have known if everyone's responsible, no one's responsible. So we would have been really clear on that accountability chart. We would have had that time for open communication, a quarterly time away from the business to plan our goals and our rocks, that annual retreat away from our business to say, here's our VTO, where are we going? So I know I just put in a ton of EOS language out there, but basically it is knowing where you're going together.
And what's so interesting about that is, so really one of the greatest benefits of a system like EOS, there's a bunch of systems out there, and certainly EOS is a really great one, but it's that structure, right? It's that structure, it's the systems, it's the processes, it's the way that you communicate consistently about the things that really matter to the business. What I find so interesting is that you're saying, like, I would have loved, looking back, if we could have done this from day one. It's so uncommon to see people doing this from day one, because you almost have to just make mistakes or learn lessons or just push the business to a certain point. And then you realize, you know what, maybe we're at this level now where we really could benefit more from systems like this. The mind starts to shift. So I completely understand what you're saying. It's just so often that people, I'd say, they're just thinking about getting the business going. They're not necessarily thinking about the benefit of having systems from day one. That's really interesting. Take me to the business. When you guys then launched it, the two of you and your partner at that time, how did you get your first few clients for this business?
Yeah, everyone's surprised by this one. This is unique. We were doing all of the networking. We were going to every networking event possible within a 45 to 60 minute drive from Cleveland, Ohio. And we actually do have a pretty good entrepreneurship hub here. I had wrote to another accounting firm. I'm blanking on their name at the moment, but shout out. They're in Columbus, Ohio. The Upsourced accounting team. Anyway, it's two gentlemen who started the company, and I loved their business model. Everything about them. I wanted to be them, right? They were my ideal company. They were how we were modeling our organization.
Sorry to interrupt you, but what was it about them that made their model or just like their business so desirable that you essentially wanted to become or to create something this like them?
Yeah. A good question. So I liked that they were a virtual accounting firm. So now, mind you, we've come a long way. So when we're having this conversation in 2023, these don't sound like crazy concepts right now, but we're talking 2014, 15. People weren't doing business online in the same way now that they were then, but they were doing business online. It was a fully virtual accounting firm. They were doing things in a systematic, automatic way that created efficiencies in their business.
And how did you know this?
You could tell from their website and the way, like, you could tell how they onboarded clients, right? They had their entire process mapped out on their website. And then I called them. So I actually emailed the gentleman and I asked them if there's anything that they would be willing to share. So best practices, shoulda, woulda, couldas, anything that they wanted to share with an up and coming firm. And the most beautiful thing happened. And I really believe I built my business on this because they did this. They took so much time out of their day and they wrote me back like a 3-page email. I printed it out. I wonder if I could still find that, of what works well in their business, what doesn't work, where they found their clients, what they wish they would have done differently. And then it made me reach out to other business owners and say, okay, if they were willing to share, can I get other people to share? And that their willingness to show that value to me. And then they shared a little bit more about their business structure. So I was able to learn more about them than then as well. And
so did they actually give you your first client? Is that kind of where the first...
They did not, but they told me what they wish they would have done. So what they wish they would have done was network more. And so we were networking our butts off, but sales weren't coming from it. I think the biggest thing that was coming from that was me gaining weight and drinking and eating a lot. That's the only thing that was happening at the moment. So we went to Craigslist. Now, again, we're talking almost, it was a long time ago, but we were going to Craigslist, LinkedIn, and Indeed, and actually communicating to people who were looking for a CFO, controller, accounting assistant, bookkeeper, who are looking for these roles. And we said, have you considered outsourcing rather than hiring full-time? Accounting is one of those things that often get lumped in with office manager. So you might have an office manager who's doing the bookkeeping, but they're not a bookkeeper, so they're not doing it well. So we're saving you a ton of time, money, and energy. And then you also know that it's being done efficiently. So we got our first few clients from Craigslist. And that's how we actually learned, what do business owners need? How do they need it? What form of communication do they want? And eventually the networking paid off in a really beautiful, amazing way. But that takes so much time. We needed something in the business now so we could start to learn and grow.
I love the scrappiness of that approach. Craigslist, Indeed, essentially finding people that are looking for a full-time and just saying, hey, have you considered that maybe you don't need somebody full-time? And this is something that I think a lot of consultants find themselves, it's not just being contacted by headhunters will fall into their lap, or opportunities, I should say, through people that they know. But so often they're unsure of how to navigate that. Like, how can you turn a potential full-time job into a consulting engagement or into something like that? If you look at everything that you've done over the years and the conversations you've had with people that might be considering, should we just bring in a full-time CFO, or maybe actually we don't need that and we can outsource? What have you found? What do you hit on in terms of the advantage or like the focus to get somebody to see that maybe they actually don't need a full-time person that can benefit from more of an advisory type of engagement?
Yeah. At the time, we were talking to people about the team. And mind you, at the time, they didn't know that it was just my business partner and I. We knew and understood that we were going to have a team. So we were always building an agency model. It was not going to be us delivering every single service to every single client. We knew that from day one. So when we talked to our potential clients, we were helping them understand that they weren't just hiring me. Right? They weren't hiring Danielle, Hayden. They were hiring Lindsay and Danielle and our team. So we had a team of resources. There was no paid time off. There's no holidays. There's no sick days. You're not having to train somebody. We're coming in as the expert. Now, when you hire somebody as a CFO, controller, a bookkeeper, you usually still have to train them in some way. And so finding somebody who is confident in their expertise enough to be able to come in and say, no, let me show you best practices. Let me model the way for you. Let me take all of the models that I've created in my past and let me bring all these right? Like Excel models, dashboards. Let me bring all that to your business. You as the business owner don't have to recreate the wheel. You don't have to be the expert because let's face it, you're not an expert in finance. So let us be the expertise for you. And then you can actually be the CEO. So we've created more of a partnership with them.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's helpful. So let's now fast forward. So you started off getting projects through these different websites. Then it sounds like your network, all the time you had to spend building the network finally kicked in. So let's now fast forward to today. What's working best for you guys in terms of lead generation, building the pipeline, just having solid qualified leads coming into the business? What's the main source of that? What do you find kind of works best from a marketing and lead generation perspective?
So for us, it is constantly being immersed in the data and seeing the data points. So this continuously changes over and over again. I was still doing a lot of in-person networking, traveling, going to conferences, doing a lot of that in-person. Pre-pandemic, I had somebody introduce me to podcasting, and they said, this is a really beautiful way for you to have a conversation with somebody and potentially some business. And so we started podcasting and finding a voice, right? What do business owners want to hear? What do people not care about? And so I started this podcasting journey, which has brought so many really beautiful, amazing relationships into my life. And that was a source of our clients for some time.
Just to interject for a moment and to clarify. So you're saying the strategy here was you created your own podcast. You would reach out to people who you want to have on the podcast, but you also thought that these could be potential clients for the business. And so you would interview them. You'd have a great conversation. And then, is that what you mean? Or
no, so exact opposite. I would pitch to come onto other people's podcasts.
Gotcha.
So
okay, like you're doing right now.
kind of what we're doing here.
Yep. Got it. Okay.
And create a relationship with podcast hosts and the listeners and that community. We do now have our own podcast. I had a client, it was a potential client at the time, that said, waiting to hear when your next podcast is going to drop. When is it coming out? And I'm like, I don't have one. So it's whenever somebody drops the next one. And he's like, you need to fix that because I would like one next week.
Right.
So we do have a podcast now, but finding our voice, started coming onto podcasts and hearing what hosts wanted to talk about and track the data. So it's really important. I'm a numbers person, love numbers. And I think whenever you're building a service-based business, it is so important to know your numbers. And that doesn't just mean your income statement. It is for every client that's coming in. Where are they coming in? Where did they find you? How did they find you? Built this data set of wherever our clients were coming from. Are they coming from face-to-face referrals? Are they coming from me belonging to a community? Are they coming from Facebook groups? Are they coming from podcasts? And then eventually it became referrals. We were doing this really amazing job for our clients. And so we started just saying, hey, do you have any friends that need help just like you needed help? And as soon as we started asking, our clients would say to us, oh, I didn't know you were looking for more clients. You're awesome. I'm happy to tell my friends about you. And then that has now become our number one data set.
Hey, it's Michael here, and we'll be right back to the podcast. But first, are you ready to grow, scale, and take your consulting business and marketing to the next level? If so, our Clarity Coaching program may be a great fit for you. You'll work with our experienced team to set up a strategic plan for your business and coach you step by step in areas like how to consistently attract more leads, develop a magnetic message that resonates with your ideal clients, strategically package and position your services, earn higher fees, win more proposals, and scale your business. To find out more about Clarity Coaching and apply, go to consultingsuccess.com and click on coaching.
And so when do you ask that? Like when in the engagement or as a relationship for somebody who's listening and joining us right now thinking, oh, maybe I could actually do that more, because most people tend to be very reactive with referrals, right? When they come, fantastic, but they don't really do anything to get them. So here it sounds like you figured out this is a pretty simple step, but just by letting our current clients know that we could help others like them, who do they know? That's worked for you. So when do you ask that? And then is there any specific language that you use, or is it as simple as what you shared a moment ago?
So again, this has changed throughout the years. At the early on stages, it was when we felt like we had time to ask. It might have been some time ago, we had somebody who was helping us with our marketing and our email marketing. And so we would put it in our email marketing, our newsletter, maybe on social media. It was in a very strategic way at the time.
Did that work for you or not really?
It did work. We did a 3 for 3 is what it was called. So if you referred 3 clients, you got 3 months free of bookkeeping. So it had to be really intentional. You had to find 3 of your friends, but the value was there. So some of our clients, their pricing that they pay us range, but let's just say on average, you're paying us $500 a month for bookkeeping. Your payoff for referring 3 of your friends is $1,500. And they're comfortable to do that because we're doing a great job for them. They're happy to tell their friends, and then they just got $1,500. So that was the campaign that we ran, and we did it on social media and then email. Today, it looks a little bit different in that when our clients become clients, they actually go into an email funnel, and there is time intervals in which we ask our clients to eat a survey on our services and then ask them if they'd like to become a referral partner.
Got it. Okay. So it's all automated right now. You're getting them feedback from your current clients. And then when they're submitting that feedback, you use that as the opportunity to say, hey, do you know anyone else that might benefit from similar services? Got it. Okay. All right. So today you have a team of 23 people. It was just you and your partner when you started. Can you walk us through how you went about and just the thought process of hiring people to go from 2 to 23? Obviously, it's a significant increase. How soon did you make the first hire? And then what kind of intervals did it look like starting from the beginning to today?
So Sarah was our first hire. She's still with us. So shout out to Sarah. We brought Sarah on about, we were like 6 to 8 months into the business. So it was pretty soon after we had started. As soon as we got clients coming in on a pretty regular basis, we knew that we needed support. And Sarah's expertise was bookkeeping. So she helped us behind the scenes, working on updating QuickBooks. And then my business partner and I were client facing, and she was behind the scenes. It worked out great for us at the time. She was, I'm going to air quote, like stay-at-home mom who wanted to be able to work nap times, evenings. So there was a ton of flexibility for her. And then we were client facing. And we did that for her and one other hire. Eventually, we got to the point where we said, this doesn't work. We cannot actually, I think it was 3 hires total. This doesn't work. We cannot be client facing for everybody. We are taking all of the client communication, everything that we're learning in client emails and client calls. It's not actually getting back to the 3 team members who are doing the work. So we are a barrier to them doing a really freaking good job. So we determined at that point that we needed to provide training and the framework in order for them to be able to actually work directly with clients. And so that set of team members went through a training program. And at the time, I also read a book, Built to Sell by John Warlow. Yeah, I love it. And so I understood that what we needed to do was create a product, right? We're not service providers. We are a product provider. And so we created a very specific system to what we were doing and how we delivered our bookkeeping and financials. And then we trained the team to be able to be client facing. And I think that's very specifically why and how we were able to get from the 3 of us to 23 people.
Did you have any fear or hesitation when you were making that shift from you being at the forefront, dealing with the clients? So often people have a concern around the client is there because of you, you're the expert. What happens if you pass it off to somebody else? They don't do as good of a job. They're not the expert. How did you think through that, and what was going on for you at that time?
Of course, obviously. Yeah.
Rhetorical question. Yeah. So,
the whole time you're saying that, I'm like, yeah, duh. Were you there?
Yeah.
There's a lot that went into that decision. And I think part of it was removing me from the business. So the business wasn't about me. When I came to speak on a podcast, I wasn't saying, come work with me. I'm saying, come work with my team and come and work within the framework that we've created. And we see results within this framework. So that's how I spoke when on social media. That's how we speak, right? You're not our Kickstart Accounting Inc. page doesn't really have anything. Yes, my picture is on there because I am sales and marketing. But other than that, it is not ever a guarantee that you're not working with me. You are working with the team and within that framework. And quite frankly, I talk about that book all the time because it literally saved my business. If I didn't transition my train of thought in that way, I would have never gotten over it, because that would have meant I had to download everything I knew to every single employee before they ever even were allowed to touch a client. So now I've created a system and a framework. Now they're being trained on the framework. So I can hire bookkeepers who are then trained within this framework, and then they can learn to work with clients and learn to become the expert.
Can you talk to me a little bit more about like why you selected the firm model, right? Where it's not just you. Like, so you could have gone the path of, I'm going to be more of a CFO type of advisor, or right where you're the expert, you're providing more advisory kind of advice recommendations, but instead you're using a firm model where your team is actually really doing like implementation. They're doing the work. They're doing the bookkeeping, right? They're running numbers, crunching stuff, all that. And I know there are advisory services, right, and offerings that you do have, but it sounds like pretty early on, you knew that you want to build this bigger than yourself. You didn't want to be necessarily the one doing all the work. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on why you made that decision so early on.
I had to think about it as you were talking. So there wasn't a very specific decision that turned my mind, other than I realized 2 things. My capacity, right? So I just couldn't charge enough to make what I was making at my old corporate job. If I was going to do that, then I was going back to work for somebody and maybe do Kickstarter, maybe do consulting on the side. But that wasn't the business model for me, because I couldn't make enough to support my kids and I under that business model. And that makes sense. And remember, I didn't hate what I did. So I freaking love being a CFO and I love building teams. So what I'm doing right now for Kickstart, that's what I did for other businesses. And so I was just going to go do another kick-ass job. My company sold, and that's what ultimately made me leave. And so I was just going to go do that again for another company who was a private equity firm who eventually wanted to sell in 3 to 5 years. And I could have made an entire career out of that. So my capacity was first and foremost. And then the market, right? The market was a big dictator in this. What we learned over time, and again, had I not been in tune to two things, the data and then the willingness to change, let my ego go. What the market needed was a bookkeeping team that gave CFO services without saying that they were giving CFO services. So a lot of our clients, not all of them, but there's a portion of our clients who are women business owners who have a really difficult time saying, I need help in my business and I'm willing to accept help. And most of them were doing between $100,000 and about $500,000 in sales. So they had a business model that was working, it was growing, they were hitting the same threshold. They couldn't do everything anymore. They needed some support. They didn't understand the numbers, but they didn't need a CFO. And they couldn't afford a CFO. And they didn't even think that they deserved a CFO in their business. And so what they really needed was a bookkeeper who could help them understand the numbers and provide some strategy. And I remember having this conversation, my ego said, I am a CFO, I'm not a bookkeeper. My ego is saying that. I said, it doesn't matter. What my clients need, what these women need, what people need, what entrepreneurs need, they need a bookkeeper, like a high-level bookkeeper that can do the bookkeeping and then help them understand the numbers. And I didn't need to be the one to do all of the bookkeeping, right? Because that's actually not my expertise at all. I'm not actually the best one to do that. So my team is, right? And so I have a team of really awesome people who know their way in and out of QuickBooks. And then I could help teach them the strategic part, the coaching piece, and how to be that next level bookkeeper. So data points and willingness to change.
What's been the hardest thing about growing the business? Here you are today, right? 23 people. It's been several years since you started it. You had a partner and then the partner left, right? So you bought the partner out. Like across all the experiences you've had to this point in the business, what would you say has been the hardest, specifically when you think about just the growth of the business?
Trusting yourself and then trusting your team. I have to trust my gut that I'm allowing the right people in, that I'm allowing the right people into the culture that we've created. I'm bringing the right people in to the leadership team. So we have 5 of us who sit on the leadership team, just trusting my gut, right? And then being able to react really confidently. So I think the biggest difference from being a corporate CFO to who I am today is that I have to make very quick decisions and be able to control my emotions in those in those decisions. And so knowing who is the right culture fit and who's not, because my job is not necessarily like getting into QuickBooks and reviewing all the work. My job is maintaining the mission, vision, values, and the culture of the company. And what the team needs from me is to show up and do that every day. And so I think that's really hard because as consultants, right, we were good at something, right? I love, so every once in a while, I'll do this with our own financials because I'm like, I just need to get in there, get into an Excel spreadsheet, just get lost in the numbers and work out some issues because I do love that, right? That was my craft. But that's not what the business actually needs from me. They need me to not actually get in the way and let them do their thing and really just be the leader.
Is there anything that you found that is just like a real best practice for all of you now in terms of the hiring process and finding people?
In terms of hiring, we do follow a methodology, the WHO.
Tell us about the WHO.
Yeah, I'm blank. It's usually right here on my desk and it's not sitting right here. But it is a book series that talks about not just a series of interview questions, but what to look for when you're actually hiring. How do you ask questions and listen for the answers so that you hear the answer or ask behavior-based questions. Great. When they answer, what are you listening for? Does it matter how they answer the behavior-based question? Of course it does. So
Jeff Smart and Randy Street.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. We'll link that up.
Okay. Perfect. So we implemented that book series in our hiring process. So every single interview, we have a standard operating procedure. So that's the other thing. We implemented EOS. Everything we do in our business has a standard operating procedure. So there's a standard set of questions, but we learned what we're listening for. And that goes back to trusting your gut, right? So we have to hear the answers and trust what we're hearing. And I don't do it alone. So I have an amazing leadership team. So before we hire, all of us listen to an interview and one of us will hear something that the others don't. And so we make the decision together whether or not somebody's a good fit.
So the other thing I'm wondering is, as the team has grown, you're definitely leveraging, it sounds like, a lot of proven systems, processes, right? When it comes to hiring or EOS and so forth. What does your technology stack look like, right? As there now are more people, leadership, bookkeepers, like you have a good sized team. How are you managing all the people and making sure that all those things are running the way they should be? There's good, clear communication in place. Any kind of tools, services that you find to be really key for you guys?
Yeah, this has changed a lot throughout the years too. And again, another willingness to be able to pivot and change and learn and not be the expert anymore. So we started on G Suite, where I was very much the expert. I knew how to run that and be really efficient in that.
That's Google Suite, just for those wondering what G Suite is, right? So Google Suite, got you. Yeah. I know for you, it's just like, of course it's G Suite, right? But
yeah.
Others might be wondering. So yeah.
So we started there, and then Asana, which was a project management software, and then some Google Sheets. And as we've grown, we realized that doesn't work. So we've moved to Microsoft and all Microsoft products. So all of our team members run through Teams, Outlook, and then all of our document sharing is through SharePoint, even with our internal and with our clients. We have an IT team who actually runs our computer system and has implemented that Microsoft. And in terms of actual projects and making sure that we are keeping track of what we're doing and when we're doing it, we use Jetpack, which is very specific for the accounting industry. So we have implemented Jetpack. But other than that, it's the common ones. We use Zoom, Teams. My favorite, we actually would not operate without Voxer. Have you heard of Voxer?
Yeah, it's like asynchronous kind of
walkie-talkie
type of thing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So how do you use Voxer? I haven't used that in years, but I've certainly heard of it. So how are you using it today?
Yeah, I love the walkie-talkie app. Every time if I have to sit and write an email and re-articulate it and then proofread it, it allows me a very quick way to share thoughts and ideas and expressions. I'm a verbal communicator. I believe that things get really lost in email and social media and all of that. And if we can record a quick Loom video or send a quick Voxer, you can hear my tone. I'm excited to talk to you. I want you to be here. I want to communicate with you. But if I sent you an email, I might just say, what's the status, right? Because I don't want to sit here and go through the fluff with you. But if I can talk to you, I'll do fluff back and forth.
It's like a little bit more kind of flavor or color or like that you can put into a video or into a voice, as opposed to just you type something and it's hard to really know, are you happy? Are you not happy? There's no emotion typically coming through in emails unless you're using a whole bunch of emoticons or stuff like that. But
yeah. And that's usually pretty unprofessional from your CEO. We go Voxer.
Totally. I was thinking with my daughters when I said that, because they love getting into the phones and hitting all those things, but that makes a lot of sense. Okay. And then, so before we wrap up, I want to just go over a couple of quick questions. One is that I'm wondering, here you are, you're CEO of your company, right? You have a leadership team in place. You have, I would sound like a board of directors. I don't know if that's still active, but you did. And then you have a good sized team supporting you and working with you. You think about how you're able to maintain your performance as a CEO, as a leader. What habits are in your life? And it could be anything, fitness, nutrition, meditation. I'm wondering, how do you make sure that you are able to show up, do your best work, and just be the best leader that you can be?
Yeah, I'm really happy to say that I've maintained this throughout the years. During that giant networking phase, maybe it fell off a little bit, but other than that, I've been really cautious and careful about making sure that I have enough white space in my day to make sure that I can show up for my team. My job is very energetic. My entire day is pouring into other people. And so if I haven't poured into myself, I cannot pour from an empty cup. Every morning it is waking up early. I don't do the whole gratitude journal. I can't do all that, but I can jump out of bed and go straight to the gym, work out for about an hour. And that's where I love to listen to an Audible book, Blinkist, podcast. So by the time I get back home, my kids are a little bit older. So I just literally have to say goodbye to them and walk them out the door. And then I'm getting ready for my day. By the time I've sat down at 8:00, I've usually listened to 2 or 3 podcasts or an hour and a half of an Audible book, which really helps pour into my personal development and helps me continue to stay fresh on ideas and strategies. And I'm listening to everything from shows like yours to fitness, nutrition, because I have to be able to pour into that area of my life too. So I need to continuously be learning, how do I take care of myself? And scheduling in meals. This is something, if my operations manager listens to, she'll laugh. I'm really great at breakfast, but we're working into my calendar to make sure that I have lunch every day. You're a much better person when you actually eat, but making sure that I have that time, because you can't just learn about nutrition. You have to actually implement those strategies that you're learning. So making sure that I'm taking time to have a full actual breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And that, again, that sounds silly. And then at night, we're either going to yoga or for a walk outside or along at the track at the Rock. It's a lot of activity. And I think this is common for CEOs. I have big energy, like big energy. And so if I have to just sit in this chair all day, I have steam coming through my ears. So it's really important that I'm setting up my day from the beginning to the end, having a lot of release for that big energy. And then because we're entrepreneurs, I also need to calm the mind. So the last thing I do at the end of the day is some stretching, meditation. I am in bed by 8:30 in the evening. Again, my kids are older. They're making fun of me. Mom, you're going to bed like hours before us. I'm like, oh, good night.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Awesome.
It's a lot.
Yeah. No, I think it's so important. And I'm very similar in terms of if I'm not at the gym or doing some kind of class and I'm running every morning. And that's where I'm listening to podcasts and learning new ideas, things to explore, or just getting some kind of motivation or inspiration. I think it's so important to have that kind of space baked into your schedule. All right. So 2 final questions. One is last 6 months or so, it sounds like you definitely consume lots of information, books, things of that nature. What's one book that comes to mind? It could be fiction or nonfiction, but just something that maybe in the last 6 months you've read or listened to that you really enjoyed and you think others might find interesting.
Yeah. So this will show my personality. David Goggins. Have you heard of him?
I have. Yeah. His new book,
Stay Hard. Before I knew it was coming out. So I wanted to re-listen to his first book so that I was like fresh on the material. I do that with shows too. So I re-listened to his first book and now I'm listening to his new book, but he is so intense. And I ran an ultra about a year ago and he is like the person who got me to that race and to that finish line. And now I'm taking that same strategies that he's talking about in his book and how do I apply that to every area of my life?
Is the second book as good as the first?
Dude, I love it. I think it's even better. His first book was more like about his life and his stories. The second book is even more life lessons. So it's not just about the running and his life story. It's life lessons. It's so powerful. He has his mom on. So in the Audible series, the end of each chapter, he comes on with Adam Skolnick and they talk about the end of each chapter. It's so unique. And so you hear him live talking about going deeper. And then he has his mom on one of them and talks about their abuse when he was young. It's so beyond powerful. So yeah, go read it.
We'll link that up in the show notes. I did read his first book and found it to be just an experience. He's very intense. Definitely make sure you got the warnings up if you got kids around because he's not afraid to let the words come out, but I'm excited to check out that second book. All right, Danielle, I want to thank you so much for coming on here today, spending a bit of time. There's so much more that we could cover, but I want to be respectful of the time that we have in the calendar. Where's the best place people can go to learn more about you and Kickstart? And we'll link that up.
Yeah, you can find me directly, Danielle Hayden _OH. Learn more about Kickstart Accounting on Instagram at Kickstart Accounting or kickstartaccountinginc.com. Learn more about the team, our story, and how we're doing everything we're doing.
There we go. All right, we'll have all that linked up. Danielle, again, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.